Members, everything my twin sister touches turns into a burst of color, though she always chooses to wear black every day.
I was trying to get a cardboard cutout of Anna, but it did not arrive on time. She is not here. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twinning with Anna and Ida. I'm your co-host, Ida Eskamani, and my twin sister, Anna, is not here. She's currently working nonstop in the Florida Capitol, but we wanted to get an episode to y'all this week, so I'm going to be running through some of the different bills that are moving in what should be the final week of legislative session. So you just have me today. By the time you hear this podcast, honestly, some of these bills might have passed. Hopefully, a lot of them have died. But let me tell you, we are fighting till we can't fight anymore. And I just want to send so much love and solidarity to the folks on the ground, the People's Lobby Corps in the Capitol, that against all odds are doing the hard work of fighting for millions of Floridians. And, you know, most Floridians will never know these folks' names, but they are on the front line of the legislature trying to make our state a better place to live for all of us. And so we're going to run through a few things, but then we're also going to end on a hopeful note, which I'm going to keep as a secret to keep you on listening to me until we get to that point. But before we go to that, I'm going to run us through a few horrifying things. So buckle up, Buttercup. We are going on a trip. So this last week, sadly, the anti-DEI for local governments bill has passed both the House and the Senate. As a reminder, this bill is just a mess of a bill. It's, of course, like rooted in racism, sexism, and just undermining so many of our basic civil rights and liberties and freedom of speech. But it's essentially designed to ban local government's ability to have DEI programs and to support different diversity-centered events. And what really came out of the debate was specifically targeting pride parades and local government's ability to fund and sponsor pride parades. And so this was a massive fight. I got to tell you, advocates and legislators fought to the bitter end. The debate was hours long, and it's being sent to the governor. And you know, it's important that we do what we can to strengthen local government to stand against these sort of things and not overinterpret and overcomply when the state passes these sort of massive preemption bills. And so that's certainly going to be an important next step because we are assuming the governor is going to sign this awful bill into law because he loves to sign awful things into law. A few other pieces that are sort of in the works. So the legislature is on the verge of passing yet another bill undermining our freedom to vote. That bill, House Bill 991. And there was even an amendment to allow students to keep using their student IDs to vote, and that was rejected. This is just a blatant attempt to make sure that some folks can vote and some folks can't, based, of course, on the assumption of what party they're going to be voting for. So, you know, if you can't win, you know, rig the rules to cheat. Another bill we talked about on the podcast is this bill that would essentially allow the governor and the cabinet to name any advocacy or nonprofit organization that they seem to disagree ideologically with as a terrorist organization. We also learned that Ron DeSantis' administration is behind that bill. That is House Bill 1471. There's also a whole list of bills being pushed by the corporate lobby, and some of these bills they're coming down to the wire, and they are real robust fights, and the vote count is bipartisan of opposition, but they're still squeezing through. But there's a long list of bills that really just, you know, continue to centralize power and profits for some of the most profitable and largest corporations and billionaires in the state while undermining workers. Sadly, today, the union busting bill has passed both chambers and it's headed to the governor. This bill was backed by some of the largest corporations in the state. You had workers of all backgrounds coming up and testifying against it, but it has passed. You know, when it comes to worker power, we're gonna keep fighting. You can try to change the rules as much as you want. We're not going to stop, but it's certainly a big loss for working families in the state. The Blue Ribbons Project bill, I don't know if we talked about this on the podcast, but it is a very interesting bill. It's a hedge fund backed bill that would let the largest developers in Florida essentially build city-sized developments without any local input or control. It's been blocked on the Senate floor, but it's still looming in these last few days. And this bill has just gotten massive opposition from a lot of rural legislators and rural communities. And it's just another example of sort of how the legislature is just, you know, it can be just a trade show for some of the most well-funded individuals and companies, despite massive broad-based opposition, right? But that fight continues. There's big showdowns as well over rural boundaries and whether to undo some of the damage caused by Senate Bill 180. There was also a preemption bill today around preventing local governments to address climate change. That sort of sneaked out of nowhere today. There's also an apparent deal on this data center bill, but honestly, it's like super weekend. The original version prohibited any tax breaks for data centers, which is like perfect and amazing. And that disappeared sometime in this process. And so we have seen other states pass some of these data center bills that sound good, but actually don't do anything because they've just put so many carve-outs and language in it. And so we have to read that one super carefully, which we will do. So stay tuned on that as well. The legislature also passed a bill that would shield Mosaic from lawsuits regarding radiation exposure from their mines. That's ready to head to the governor. So that's depressing. The Sig Sauer bill, which we've talked about, this is the bill that essentially would also shield another corporation, a gun manufacturer, from litigation around their guns basically just going off and shooting law enforcement officers. That bill passed the House. It is currently stuck in the Senate, so it's still in play. There was just an absolutely insane Medicaid work requirements bill that passed the Senate. It's unlikely in the House at this time. I'm knocking on wood. It's somewhat connected to the budget as well, but honestly, that debate was also just like horrifying. How wealthy are you to just completely disregard people on Medicaid? Like the most like vulnerable people. It's just stunning. So, but I do want to end, because that was depressing. And I want to end on a couple things that are giving me hope. There is a chance we are in a good place, but honestly, everything can change in the legislative process, especially in the last few days. This is when these sort of zombie bills come back up. Something you thought was dead appears as an amendment, or something that was never even could file just appears as an amendment. Like they were holding it until they thought no one was looking. And so you got to watch everything to the very last minute. But there is a big chance the legislature is going to decouple from some of the biggest corporate tax cuts in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which I call the One Big Billionaire Act. That would be a huge win for working families and just a testament to years of work to really look at the tax package and consider it like a moral document about where the state stands. And I got to give so much love to HIV/AIDS advocates and Equality Florida and Michael Rayner in particular, who's an amazing just grassroots champion. There's just been this big issue around AIDS medicine funding and the ADAP budget, and essentially the Department of Health is just like changing the rules to take away life-saving medication from anywhere from 12,000 Floridians is one of the estimates. And there's a bipartisan fix on the table. The Senate has put this forward. It's essentially a stopgap measure to make sure we have funding until the new fiscal year and come up with a longer-term solution. Really, really rooting for this one and hopeful that this will make the finish line very fast so folks can get the funding they deserve for healthcare. So that's a hopeful piece. But broadly speaking, the horrors persist in many, many ways. But we did want to leave you today with some more hope, a hopeful future. With new beginnings come endings too. Folks might already know this, but as part of the legislative process, when you finish your term, of course, we do have term limits in Florida. And so when you finish your term, you have the opportunity to essentially give a farewell address on the floor. If you've been watching the Senate, you probably tuned in and you just see a lot of folks talking about one another in very loving ways. The Senate kind of allows every single member to give a farewell speech in honor of the senior member, and then the senior member gives their speech. So there's literally been like farewells that have been like 2.5 hours long on the floor in the Senate. The House is a lot more efficient. There are many more of them, right? But House members get around like 10 to 20 minutes to give their farewell speech. And Representative Anna Eskamani is finishing up for her 8 years in the legislature. And of course, she flipped this seat from red to blue. So many countless folks doubted her, and she proved them all wrong, and has built an incredible, incredible legacy in the legislature, but infrastructure has just leveled the playing field of what it means to be in public service. I am incredibly proud of her. But as part of her ending her term, she gave her farewell address this week. It is tender, it is powerful, it is weepy, pull out the tissues, but we wanted to share her speech with all of you. So we're going to conclude this podcast listening to Rep. Anna Eskamani give her farewell address in the Florida House. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, 8 years ago, I walked into this chamber as the daughter of working-class immigrants raised in Orlando who relied on public schools, public health care, and public servants that I did not know but who believe that government could be a force for good. Believe it or not, I am not someone who ever wanted to run for public office, ever. In 5th grade, I wrote an award-winning essay telling the world I want to be an engineer. And as an Iranian American, my choices, according to my parents and ancestors, were limited to being a doctor, engineer, or worst case scenario, a lawyer. But like so many in this chamber, politics found me. My first attempt at being an organizer was when I was 10 years old, and my best friend at the time was being moved to a different class, thus a different lunch period. So I collected petitions to keep her in my class and deliver them to the school principal. Because as we know, all politics is local. And though I lost that first campaign, I never stopped advocating for issues, big or small, that I cared about. When I got to UCF back in 2008, I got involved with campus organizing and met a lot of political voices that have walked into these chambers, like State Representative Scott Randolph, his wife Susanna Randolph, Amy Mercado, Steve Shale, so many that looked at this bright-eyed 18-year-old and thought that maybe there was something in her where she could fill those same shoes in the future. They helped me understand the power and importance of local and state government. After completing my undergraduate degree from UCF, go Knights, charge on, in 2012, I was offered a job at my local Planned Parenthood. I actually was offered a lunch at the Panera Bread down the street, and the incoming CEO, who was a young leader herself, Jenna Tosh, offered me a very intro-level job at Planned Parenthood. And I would work there for about 7 years. Rose in the ranks, became the Senior Director of Public Affairs and Communications, went through a merger in 2015 where my service area grew from 4 to 22. As you imagine, I became a road warrior, managing a team of 6, fighting for reproductive health and freedom, and coming to this building with patients to tell their stories. But in 2018, I went from an advocate chasing lawmakers in the halls to a member right here on the House floor. And now you can't run away from me. And so there's so many different people in my life that has brought me to this point where I am today that I want to make sure I give flowers to and recognize. First is my family. My dad, who is one of the most selfless and patriotic people you will meet, he cares so deeply about this country as an immigrant. My big brother, Aria, and sister-in-law, Melanie, who live in Miami now. And, of course, my angel mother, Nasreen. And my twin sister, Ida, who is in the gallery today, in the East Gallery. Give everyone a wave, Ida. I do have a twin sister. Yes! Members, everything my twin sister touches turns into a burst of color, though she always chooses to wear black every day. In 2004, our angel mother passed away after a long fight with colon cancer. My sister always reminds me that with a loss like that, thank you, members, there's always a hole in your heart. But as my sister says, if you allow that heart to get bigger, it just feels much more manageable. And so thank you, Ida, for being that tender warrior and for my partner in crime through all these years and all this work. I cannot have done any of this without you. I love you. Thank you. Okay, I was trying to break the record not crying, Mr. Speaker, but I failed. I also want to acknowledge my family in Iran. Many members know that I'm a proud Iranian American, and my family is not representative of the regime in Iran, and I ask humbly that you pray for their safety and the safety of all innocent people and of our service members who are caught in the middle of war and conflict. Second, I have to give a shout out to my amazing teachers. Mr. Kendall, who was my brother's and my science teacher all through middle school and into high school, he came to my mom's funeral with a basket of candy and sodas and treats to remind my sister, myself, and my brother that it was okay to still be kids despite the heaviness of the loss that we had experienced. To Mr. Jurgens, my technical director at University High School, who gave us a safe place to learn and grow in theater and to fall in love with the act of storytelling and, of course, Broadway. And to Mr. Norris, my AP government teacher, who inspired us to become more civically engaged and pushed me to minor in political science, which eventually became a major. There are so many more teachers in my public school system that I could give a shout out to, but I also want to acknowledge my UCF professors, Dr. MC Santana and Dr. Preston Sindler of the UCF Women and Gender Studies program. Great program, despite debate here. Dr. Sadri, Dr. Jewett of the political science department, and of course, my dissertation chairwoman, Dr. Knox, who stuck with me for 8 years. I started my PhD program before I filed for office. Again, didn't think I was going to do this, and kept at it. And despite COVID-19 and all the challenges of serving legislature, I finished my program in 2024. UCF is truly where I grew up as an advocate, and I want to, of course, let y'all know that many of my intimidating questions and good debate points comes from my work at UCF. Third, I want to acknowledge my amazing constituents. I've had the honor of representing 7 different municipalities: Orlando, Winter Park, Edgewood, Belle Isle, Maitland, the historic town of Eatonville, and parts of unincorporated Orange County. Many of the newer members might not remember this, but I ran in a swing seat. So it was a very tough election cycle. For anyone who's done it, you know what I'm talking about. And it forced me to also get out of my comfort zone, to meet constituents of all backgrounds, and knock on doors where there's yard signs, not for me next door, right? And it helped me learn different viewpoints from across the political spectrum, and it also pushed me to be thoughtful in how I build bridges to solve problems. I represent some of the wealthiest zip codes in Central Florida, but I also serve those who are living under I-4 without a home. No matter how much money you have or don't have, your needs are my priority. And I thank you for trusting me, the constituents of District 42, with your stories and your future. Serving you has been the honor of my lifetime. You reminded me every day that representation is not about a title. It's about responsibility, access, and accountability. And finally, members, the fourth and last group of people that have impacted me more than ever are all of you here in the Florida House. And I wish there was time to acknowledge every single person here, because I would have endless stories to tell, and we'd be here, Mr. Speaker, all night. Maybe that's a good way to TP the next bill. But I first want to thank my staff, including my campaign staff, super volunteers, and interns all over the years. And that includes so many people, but to name a few: Alex, Lauren, Brent, James, Madison, Victoria, Zane, Jasmine, Shala, who's here in the gallery, David, Allison, Shane, Juan, Andrea, Sammy, Kaylee, Ken, Wally, Ricardo, and of course, Cheyenne. These are the folks. Yeah, we can hear it. Okay. You are all, like all the staffers for our teams, the unsung heroes of this work. You carry the late nights, the constituent calls, the research, the canvassing, the heartbreak, and the hope. You are public servants in the truest sense, and I'm proud to say that my legislative offices, especially here in Orange County, many of the legislative offices have hired Team Anna interns and alumni, and I'm just so grateful that we continue to impact this process way beyond my years here. And so I want to also, of course, acknowledge the staff that make this place run, the mighty cleanup crew, the IT crew, house printing, and the folks that keep us fed here every single day. You have no idea how much I love our conversations early in the morning and late at night, and how grateful I am to you. Solidarity, appreciation, and love to each one of you. To the committee staff, and especially my friends in the Ways and Means silo, the best committee. And to the Speaker's office, administrative staff, you are brilliant, and nothing here would work without you. To the sergeants, I feel like I've inherited several new Papa Bears and Mama Bears. Thank you for your watchful eyes, your gentle nods, knowing smiles, and for keeping us all safe. To Clerk Jeff Takis and his unmatched team, it's been an honor to nerd out with you, whether it's about ska or Star Wars. But truly, your respect to this process is one that I try to reflect every single day. Thank you for inspiring us to be the best version of ourselves, regardless of how tough the debate gets, and to live up to the title of representative. And to House Democratic staff, you carry so much in an environment that is not built in your favor. Yet every day you get up, you do the work, and you keep us grounded and informed as a caucus. Keep going and never give up. To my movement family, I have been in your shoes, and it is not fun. You are champions for the state. I thank you for defying gravity in all of your advocacy and leading with compassion, conviction, and care, even when that path gets tough. I've been so privileged to practice collaborative governance with you. Keep going. To all of the government affairs professionals, even though we disagree, especially on taxes, please know that I respect the work that you do and the context you provide to every bill number. And finally, to my peers, my members, current and former. There is nowhere else in the state of Florida where you can walk into a house and say that I see all of Florida. And with social media segmenting us and only showing us content that feeds into our bias, I can say that it's been a transformational experience for me to see you, to hear you, and to learn why you feel the way that you do. I'm not just a better public servant because of you. I am truly a better person. Mr. Speaker, you are a fierce advocate for this chamber. And though we do not always agree, the way you have defined the independence of the Florida House will be one that other speakers will no doubt model, and history will remember you fondly for it. And to Chair McClure, I have so much gratitude to you, especially for the time you helped my twin sister and I in Plant City when we ran out of gas. I appreciate you more than you know, and I'm grateful that I can always call on you when I need an extra little push. To all members of the majority party, colleagues in the front rows, we have not always seen eye to eye. In fact, many of the most important fights on this House floor of my time here have placed us on opposite sides. But disagreement is not an indication of failure. It's essential to the process. And my hope is that even in our toughest debates, we remember the humanity behind each one of us. And we remember that the people of Florida deserve leaders who listen, who learn, and are willing to reconsider when the evidence and lived experiences of our constituents call us to do so. To my leader, and to my entire Democratic caucus, it has been a gift of a lifetime to inherit so many new brothers and sisters. I hope I've done my part to not only be a good colleague to each one of you, but also a good friend and an accomplice, and a good accomplice in creating good trouble. I want to give a special shout out to my Orange County delegation and to my work husband, Senator Carlos Guillermo Smith. And if you asked him, everything I am, I owe to him. I love you all so much, and I can't wait to see leadership you will continue to demonstrate, especially for the working class. As I wrap up my closing remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind us that public service is not about winning every argument, though I have won many. It's about improving lives. The chamber works best when we remember that we are temporary stewards of something much greater than ourselves. The consequences of our votes endure long after we are gone. Florida is a dynamic, diverse, complicated, and extraordinary state. It deserves leaders who listen more than they speak, who prioritize people over politics and corporate greed, who spend less time chasing retweets and more time solving problems. People who understand that disagreement does not always have to mean disrespect. If I leave you with anything, it is this. The personal is political, and policy is the ultimate connector between the two. So when we debate healthcare, someone is still waiting for treatment. When we debate housing, someone doesn't know if they can afford to live in their home. When we debate public education, a child's future is being shaped. When we debate funding, somebody is waiting on the APD wait list. When we debate social safety net, someone is facing a delayed unemployment benefit. When we debate immigration, racial justice, and LGBTQ plus rights, we risk otherizing people that we care and love. When we debate voting rights, the strength of our democracy hangs in the balance. And when we talk about land use, we're talking about Florida's precious ecosystems. But behind every bill is a human story, and behind every vote we cast is a life that will be impacted. And we may not always agree on the solutions, but please remember that there is no scarcity to human dignity, that your success does not always have to be tied to someone else's failure, and doesn't always have to be a zero-sum game. As I close this chapter, I do so with a deep sense of gratitude, but also an unshaken belief in Florida's future. Progress is rarely linear. It can be incremental and zigzag, sometimes frustratingly slow, and always driven by people who refuse to give up. It took us 5 years in this chamber to eliminate the tax on diapers for kids. 5 years. A reminder to the freshmen here that sometimes good policy does take a long time to pass. But nevertheless, hope is not naive. Hope is disciplined. Hope is disciplined, and we build it together. For all members of my senior class, you also know that service does not end with a term limit. And so I wish you good luck in your next endeavors. As you might know, and as I mentioned, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And the new series Andor, which everyone should watch, there's a code phrase that the rebels use to identify one another in different spaces. That code is, I have friends everywhere. As I leave this house, I do so knowing that even in some of the most unexpected ways, and in one of the most remarkable places, that I have friends everywhere. Thank you again for 8 impactful years. And for those who are worried about missing my voice here on the House floor or the Florida channel, don't worry. If the voters agree, you very well might hear my voice every day on the tram at the Orlando International Airport.
Eskamani, I was going to say that there are a few members that have brought more energy and passion to this chamber than you have the last 8 years, but I think many will agree that you probably are the member that has brought the most energy and passion to this floor. And the way you have prepared for every bill, usually in opposition, is very impressive. Even right before I walked up here to get your farewell remarks started, I thought you would have been preparing your speech, and instead you were preparing for another debate. So thank you for what you've brought to the Florida House, and we wish you the best.
And for one of the last times of my public service career, I will say thank you, Mr. Speaker.